She sat by the window watching the horizon as the clouds gathered above the quiet town. It had been weeks since she had last seen him, yet every evening she waited as though the setting sun carried some unspoken promise. Her eyes, once bright with laughter, now carried a weight that words could not describe. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the old wooden clock on the wall. Every second felt like a whisper of time slipping away, a reminder that waiting too long often becomes its own form of heartbreak. The rain had not yet begun, but the sky carried that heavy stillness that comes before a storm. She remembered the way he used to say that rain always felt like a new beginning. He loved the smell of wet earth, the way droplets traced down glass panes like tiny rivers, the way the world seemed softer after a downpour. But for her, the approaching rain felt like a curtain about to fall on the final act of a story that had already ended in silence. She had been waiting for a message, a call, any sign that he still thought of her. Days turned into nights and the seasons shifted, but the silence remained. The memories, however, refused to fade. She could still hear his voice in her dreams, still feel the warmth of his hand against hers. There was no explanation, no goodbye, only his sudden absence, as if he had stepped out of her life and left the door swinging in the wind. The townsfolk often saw her sitting at that window, the girl who waited. They whispered about her in the market, in the bakery, by the riverbank, each crafting their own version of the story. Some said he had gone to war and never returned. Others believed he had found another life, another love. No one knew the truth, not even her. That was the cruelest part. She had been left not with answers, but with endless questions. As dusk deepened, the first drops of rain began to tap gently against the window. It was so soft at first that she barely noticed, but soon the rhythm grew steady, filling the silence with a quiet, almost melodic drumming. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared out into the gray world beyond the glass. The streets were empty, the lamps flickering to life, casting halos of golden light that danced in the rain. She pressed her palm against the cold pane, as if by touching it she could reach the other side, the place where he might still be. She remembered the first time they met on a rainy afternoon much like this one. She had been late for the bus, fumbling with a broken umbrella, and he had offered her his jacket without a second thought. That simple gesture, so effortless yet so kind, had been the beginning of everything. They had shared countless rainy evenings after that, under one umbrella, beneath streetlights, laughing as they ran through puddles. Rain had always been their companion, their silent witness. Now, as the storm gathered strength, the rain felt different. It felt like the world itself was grieving with her. She closed her eyes and listened to the rain's song. In that moment, the line between memory and reality blurred. She imagined him walking through the rain, coming back to her as he always used to, his hair wet, his smile as soft as the rain itself. She wanted to believe that the rain could bring him back, that it could wash away the distance between them. Hours passed as she sat there, the rain falling harder, the wind rattling the shutters. She thought about all the nights she had waited, the conversations they never had, the words she had left unsaid. She thought about the promises they once made under the starry sky, when the world felt endless and love felt unbreakable. She thought about the moments when she had wanted to give up waiting, but found herself drawn back to the window, as if hope had taken root in her heart and refused to let go. She remembered his last words, spoken months ago in a tone that was both tender and distant. "Wait for me." That was all he had said without explanation, and she had waited, believing in those 3 words as if they were a vow carved in stone. But as time passed, hope began to wither, replaced by a hollow ache. Yet something inside her had refused to let go completely. Perhaps it was love. Perhaps it was faith. Perhaps it was simply the inability to accept that some stories end without a final chapter. The rain poured harder, and she could see the streets slowly filling with shimmering pools of water. The world outside seemed both near and far, like a dream half remembered. For the first time in months, she let herself cry. The tears flowed silently, mingling with the rain on the other side of the glass. There was no anger in her grief, only a quiet surrender to the reality she had long denied. And then, just as the storm reached its peak, there was a knock at the door. It was faint at first, almost lost in the rain's roar, but it came again, more insistent this time. Her heart stopped for a moment. She rose slowly, as if moving through water, each step heavy with disbelief. She opened the door, and there he stood, soaked to the bone, rain streaming down his face, his eyes carrying the weight of untold stories. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The world outside reduced to the sound of falling rain. No words were spoken, none were needed. In his eyes she saw the apology he could not voice, the longing that had brought him back. In her eyes he saw the pain of her waiting, the fragile hope that had somehow endured. The rain fell around them like a blessing, washing away the silence, softening the edges of their sorrow. He stepped inside, and without a word she reached for his hand. It was cold and trembling, but it was real. In that small gesture, years of waiting, months of despair, and countless unspoken questions found their answer. They sat together by the window as the night deepened, the storm slowly fading into a gentle drizzle. There were still stories to tell, wounds to heal, truths to face, but for that moment they simply sat in silence, watching the rain as it traced silver lines down the glass. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel alone. For the first time, the rain no longer felt like an ending, but like the beginning of something fragile yet new. Sometimes love does not return as we imagine it will. Sometimes it comes back weathered by time and distance, carrying the scars of its own journey. But when it does return, it brings with it the quiet understanding that waiting, though painful, was never in vain. She had waited for the end, but the rain had brought her a new chapter. And as dawn broke over the quiet town, the world glistening in the soft morning light, she realized that the rain had always been their story's silent witness. It had been there at the beginning. It had wept with her in the middle, and now it had welcomed them into a new beginning.